Okay. The sikha we will learn today is in Likkutei Sichos, Chelik Chavdala, the third sikha to Parsha Shoftim. So the Rebbe starts, even posik Yehoda makes asoda, and the posik, which it says in this week's Parsha, that a man is a tree in the field. Frag the Gemara, so the Gemara asks, Yehoda makes asoda, is a man a tree in the field? And the Gemara answers, and the simple pshat, the way it seems superficially, the Gemara is answering that there is something, a certain detail in which a person, a man, is similar to a tree. Just like by a tree, not from all trees you're able to eat. Some trees you shouldn't eat, you could cut off, and some trees you're not allowed to cut off and you have to eat the fruit. Same thing with a man. And I'll read what the Gemara says. The Gemara answers like this. Ela mishum deksiv, that when it says a person is like the tree in the field, is because it says, by a tree, it says, one pasuk says, from the tree you will eat, and don't cut it off. You're not allowed to cut it off, you should eat the fruit. Ksiv, another pasuk says, a tree, that you should destroy it and cut it off. How's it be? So obviously, it means that sometimes there is a tree that you could eat from, sometimes a tree you shouldn't eat from, should cut off. So that's the similarity to a person. A person, and it means a person who's a Talmud Chacham, sometimes you should learn from him, sometimes not. Im Talmud Chacham Hoganu, if he's a proper Talmud Chacham, Memenu Teichal, eat from him. And as Rasha says, Lamedim, and learn from him. Eat the fruit, learn from Torah. The Eisei Leisichros, and don't cut off. Im Lav, if he's not a Talmud Chacham Hogan, if he's not a proper Talmud Chacham, Eisei Sashches, then destroy it, which means, as Rasha says, Sur Me'alov, go away from him. The Korota, you should cut it off. So basically, it seems like what the Pasuk is saying, that a person is like a tree in the field, and the Gemara teaches is that in a certain detail, a person is like a tree, which means a tree is more or less like a moshel, a parable to a Talmud Chacham. And certain parts of what we find by a tree will apply to a Talmud Chacham, also to a person. But the Rebbe is going to show you can't say that's the pshat, that the Gemara is telling us that there's a certain detail in a person which is similar to a certain detail, the same detail by a tree. So the Rebbe says like this: we have to understand. From them, what the Gemara fragt, by the Gemara asking, is a person like a tree in the field? Is muchach from that? We must say, the Gemara nemtona, the Gemara assumes, takes on, adoso the posik vergleicht an odem says asode, that this that the posik compares a person to a tree in the field is nicht blaze, weil eitz asode dient wie a moshel from welchem we can verstehen, eino der redliche von der Meides at Chunas Odom. The Gemara doesn't think that the pshat is that a person, a tree, is a moshel, a parable to a person, and a parable isn't everything. A parable is there are certain things. One, there are a few things that they have equal, that they have similar. But that's from the way the Gemara asks the question, seems that the Gemara doesn't feel that it's a moshel. Because the posik makes a vergleichen say, nor in Visa Protim, the Gemara means only it's a moshel, and they're equal, similar only in certain details. But doch demot kenort nicht zu fragen. So the Gemara couldn't ask, is a person a tree in the field? So we know there are many details that a person is similar. There are certain comparisons, as it says in Pirkei Avos, that a person is like a tree, etc., etc. So we know that there is a possibility to compare the two. So what's the Gemara's kasha? Now, the Gemara actually, in order for the Rebbe says, the Gemara doesn't ask the kasha, Lama nimshul odem leitzasode, why a person is compared to a tree. The Gemara just asks, is a person a tree? That means that the Gemara doesn't feel that it's compared in a certain detail. See, in other things in that same Gemara, the Gemara asks that question, why is a person compared, etc., etc. Here the Gemara just asks, is a person a tree? So the Gemara feels that, and we'll learn insight further, nor as an odem is eitzasode. The Gemara feels that the posik means a person is a tree. And eitz, driktuis, need place tailwise. A person expresses not only parts, or the tofeldike protim, or side secondary things, details from the modern from the person. But the ganze Sach von Odem eitzasode. A person is a tree, as if that's what the Gemara asks. So why is a person a tree? And the Gemara doesn't mean that why is a person compared to a tree, because that you can always answer. We find certain things a person is compared. Now in order 5, the Rebbe says that from Rasha seems that that's the Gemara status. As if the Gemara is asking, is Adam a tree? Adam is not a tree. And the answer to the Gemara that it's not really, doesn't really mean a person is a tree. It means that there are certain details which you compare it, and the detail is by the Talmud Chacham Hagen. But the Rebbe says, even if you learn like that, what was the Havamina? What was the Chatchila, the Havamina, that a person is like a tree? Assuming that that's what the Gemara holds. The Gemara knows it's a tree, that the whole person is the concept of a tree. And the answer is not that it's only a moshel. As if the Gemara, the Havamina, it's not a moshel. So assuming the Gemara feels it's a tree, and the Maskon is that it's a tree. And Rebbe says we could add that this is also the fact that a person is bechlolis, a tree, not only compared similar in certain details, is also understood from them was mezoknit kantachnim b'chamishosa b'shvat. The fact that chamishosa b'shvat, which is Rosh Hashanah L'Ilon, is the Rosh Hashanah the trees, we don't say tachnim. As it says in Shulchan Aruch. Also, it's a minig says in Peiros Eilon B'Yimze. It's a minig as it says in Mogen Avram, and brought down in the Mashloma to Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, where the Brovner, it's a minig Yisrael to eat fruits of a tree on this day. Umefarbintes, beaten posik, ki odom eitz asode, and this is connected. It is connected. They connected the Mefarshim, the poskim connected to the posik, ki odom eitz asode. So from there we see that it means that the person and the tree go together. A beitz asode is nit mervi amoshel odom. If eitz asode, the tree, is only a parable to a person, is ach nit ken tam maspik as der odom zol praven dem eitz asodes, dem eitzes Rosh Hashanah. Then it's not a good enough reason that a person should celebrate the Rosh Hashanah of the tree. All it is a moshel. There are certain aspects in the tree that we find by a person too. But that's why we celebrate the Rosh Hashanah from the tree. In other words, that the Rebbe says in the Order 12, it's not the same that we find that we do things with the tree. For instance, there is a meaning by some people that on Shavuos, we bring trees into the shul. That's not a problem. It's not that we're saying a person is like a tree. It's for a certain reason, because the mind has a matan Torah, it's everything. But here we're saying we celebrate the yontiv of the tree. If it's only a moshel that compares certain details, why would we celebrate that? If the full movement for that, we understand as the Odom makes a soda meant that the person is a tree of the field means canal, like we said before, as their Odom is Eitz HaSoda, the person is the tree, is a tree. The Farah the Rosh and from the Beitz, that's what the Rosh and the tree has a connection to the person. So we came to a conclusion. The Rebbe says that when the Pasuk says Odom Eitz HaSoda, we see from the Gemara that a person is a tree. And that was the Gemara's kasha. What do you mean a person is a tree? In which way is a person a tree? But if that's the pshat, which we just said is not verstandig, so we don't understand. If that's the question, how is that question answered? What does the Gemara answer? That the comparison is that just like by a tree, sometimes you could cut it, and sometimes you shouldn't. Same thing with the Talmud Chacham, which is a person. Sometimes you should learn from him if he's a Talmud Chacham Hogan, and if not, you shouldn't learn from him. How does that answer the question? Because when we answer, we also all we gave was a moshel. We're saying that the tree is a moshel to a person, and the person is the nimshel, and this is a moshel. The question we said before was not how is there a moshel. A moshel, we could find other things that the tree is a moshel to a person. The question was, how is a person a tree? So how did we answer it? When we just answered another, we gave a detail of a moshel. That's number one. And the second, the nochmer, nor ein prat. And what we answered was that we found one detail in which a person is similar to a tree. That doesn't answer the question when the question was, how is a person a tree? Life of the Shaila came, so the original question remains. A certain similarity between a person and a tree. That's why you could say, as a statement, automates a soda. That was the question of the Gemara. So we answered, we found the detail. But the question was not a detail. The question was, how can we say a person is a tree? We must find something that a person and a tree are the same. Not only we found a detail that this is a moshel. There's something in a person which is a tree. That's what is it? And the second question is, the mitzvah says how does it make sense to describe the specialty, the quality of a person, which is a medaber? We find 4 categories in the world. We find semeach, daimon, semeach, chaim, medaber. Daimon is inanimate things, and semeach are things that grow. Chai is animal life, and medaber is the talker, that means a person. And here we're saying that the person is like the tzemeach. How could you compare a person which is a medaber, that his maila is like a tree, that he has a certain qualities of a tzemeach, of things that grow? Is that how you describe a person? And that's how do we compare the two? So the first question is, how does the Gemara answer the kasha? And the second one, what is taka the pshat that the person is a tree? True is that in a person you do have the concept of growth. Certainly we see actual things that grow, his hair and his nails, etc. So we do find the concept. We can't say that there's no concept of tzemeach, of growth in a person. But if you're saying because we find something like that by the person, we find something more than that. We find the concept of chai. Chai is an animal that's alive. We find that by a person too. We know that a person has all four. The order 13, the Rabbi says, it says in Chassidus that the person is kolul, contains daimim, tzemeach, chai, medaber. So he has chai also. So why compare it to a tzemeach? Hitaka has parts which is like a tzemeach, but that's not a reason to say that his inyan is tzemeach. And second thing, the main question is, nitin dam b'shteit mailas ha'odam medaber. This is not his maila. First thing, even if this would be his maila, it would be a maila in the person, but there's better maila. The maila is chai. And the second thing is this the maila of a person, that he is a tzemeach? So how behind vi is masim to zogen ha'odam etzasoda, that the person is the tree in the field? So the Rebbe explains it like this: the maila miyuchedis, the special quality, uizgitelkeit, this special thing, the exclusive maila, from mina tzemeach gabe medaber v'chai. There is something special in tzemeach, in the things that grow, over a human being and over animals. And what is it? B'shteit in them was verdeckt nit, behalten is a nemes chayes. That a tree that grows, tzemeach that grows, doesn't hide, doesn't cover up, and it doesn't hide its true source of life. He's always connected through the roots to his source. There is the source of chayas, of life, of things that grow, is from the ground. It's from the ground itself, but it's not really the earth, the physical earth. It's the keich hatzameach, the power of growth that's in the ground. And things that grow don't cover up on their source. They're always connected to their source. The merai stop at tzemeach from the radom. If you tear away a tzemeach, something that grows from the ground, that the tzemeach is not growing anymore. So tzemeach doesn't cover up, reveals. It's very obvious his connection to his source. By chai medaber gefindt by an animal or by a human being, we do not find that they always have to be connected to their root, to their source. In which way? They're not connected to the source of the ground, of the earth, because the source really of where they were created from, animals and human being. There's a pasuk that says everything came from the ground. So that's number one, and it's not connected to the ground. There is such a thing. The Rebbe says in order 14, there's a Mishnah that says there's an animal called, or something called Adnei Asode, which is like an in-between chai and tzemeach, and that's like an animal that's connected to the ground. That's an exception. That's not the normal thing of a chai or medaber. Chai and medaber are not connected. They're next to the ground, and they came from the ground. Another thing, no, there is Havas, later from Yadr Chai and medaber, after the creation, which means after the birth of a human being or an animal, is a nit is not connected to the source, to the root from where he was born. In other words, you're born and you're not always connected to the mother. Only when you're in the mother's stomach or when you're born, and then the connection is not there anymore. So we again see that it's not connected in the official, obvious way to the source. Also, the food that an animal or a human being eats is in such a way that the food doesn't have to be connected to the ground. So we see all that the connection to the source from where you get chayas, side by an animal, side by a person, is not revealed. You don't see it. But by things that grow, there it's always connected to the power of growth that's in the ground. It's always connected to the ground. Now, the truth is, what the Rebbe is trying to say now is that this is even a bigger chid, something more special than by fish. Because by fish, we also have the senior that they're always within their source in the water. And the Rebbe explains it. We do find similar things, similar by fish. They always have to be in the water, which is the source of their life. If they are separated from the water, from the sea, they die right away. So here we see another thing, which also always reveals, and it's in a revealed way, that it's connected to its source. It's even more than the things that grow from the ground. But the fish, their whole being is inside the water. See, by things that grow, they're growing out of the ground, but they're still connected. By the fish, it's even more. Their whole being is within their source. This itself explains that it's by things that grow from the ground, there's a bigger mila even over the fish in their connection to their source. In them gufis, in this itself, we see something special in things that grow, the fish. That by the things that grow, we see that even when they're out of their source, when they're growing out of the ground, which means they're going out of their source, like by trees, they could grow 3 tefachim up and go 10 tefachim, go very high. They're always connected with the roots that's in the ground. And through the roots, with the power of growth that's in the ground. So this is something you don't find by fish. By fish, they have to be inside the whole thing. By the things that grow, then even when they're out, they still connected to the ground, which we don't find it by fish. By fish, they're completely in, and if they're out, they're cut off. And by things that grow tzemeach, even when they're out of their source, they're still connected to their source. Very another thing why by things that grow tzemeach, it's more than by fish. By dogim is the dog proti klau mit verbunden mit sein moker chayes proti. By the fish, it's not connected at all to his source of his specific life source. Where do we see it? A gate river. Let's say he was born in a certain water, and it moves. So it doesn't have to stay in the water where he came from. It could go from a river to a sea, or opposite, from the sea to the river. It is connected to the place it came from. So we see here that by the fish, it goes away a little bit from its source, while by things that grow, never leave their source as long as they're tzemeach. So that's by all things that grow, all tzemeach. In them gufis in this itself, there's a special quality in a tree compared versus all other things that grow. Why? Under its mochim, other things that grow, bitvua, grain, priadoma, fruit of the ground, kates are similar. They don't stay there a whole year. From one year to the other, they continue staying. It's certain amount they're there, and then they're not the tree, they're not, fruit anymore, things like that. After a while, they're whatever they are, they're out. Trees, they give fruit every year. The trees could take all kinds of changes, summer and winter, etc. As their existence doesn't stop. It's connected to the ground, and it continues and continues, always as being connected to the ground, and they do their job of giving out food. But that shows that their connection to the source of their life is very, very strong. Was Gitten say I take of Godel that puts into them such a strength, if neatness from not to get effect influenced by the changes of time, they stay in their existence, they grow and grow. That means that their connection to the ground is very, very strong, that connection gives them chayas for a long time, which is even more than fruit and things like that, fruit that grows from the ground, because that, after a while, it goes away. And here, the tree stays connected to the ground from long time and all kinds of different weather, etc., and it still continues. So this is what we see, the Maila of Tzemeach, and in Tzemeach, the Maila of a tree, of an Eitz Asod of a tree. Their Odom is Elam Cotton. We want to show that this Nakuda that we just said is the concept, the main Maila of a tree. We find that by a human being too. And that's the Mahus of the human being, as we'll see. We know that the person is called Elam Cotton. He's a small world. So Pung for the Elam Godel is eingeteilt in 4 Sugim, just like the world as a whole is divided into 4 categories. Daimim, Tzemei, inanimate objects, Tzemeach, things that grow, Chai is living things, which is animals, Medaber, and the speaker, which is people. So by a person, Beruchnius, spiritual sense, that has these 4 categories. As we know, where do we see the 4 categories? We know at the Midas from the mentions and it says in Chassidus in many places. In Order 21, he says in Torah 8, and many Maimorim, it says that the Midas is the feelings, the emotions that a person has. That's called the Tzemeach. We said before that the person contains Doimim Tzemeach Chai Medaber. The Tzemeach of the persons are the emotions. Because emotions could grow. You could like something and eventually you like it more and you like it more, or opposite, you don't like something and then you don't like it more and more. Midas grow. So Midas is called Tzemeach on the person. Not Seichel. In Keich HaSeichel, in Seichel, you could find a Seichel grows. You understand it and you could grow, understand it even more, and that's true, but that's not. If Ran Nitlezerin Atzmicha Mekadlas Legadlas by Seichel, is not only the fact that it grows from being small, less, and then to be more, the Inyan from Chai. Seichel has also the Inyan of Chai. Chai is an animal. What's the difference in an animal and the plant that grows? Where do we see that an animal has Chayas, more life than its Tzemeach? Its Tzemeach doesn't move. It can't move. It's in one place. Chai moves. They could walk around because they have more. They're alive, so they could move. Like an animal that moves, that is able to move from one place to another. So that's what Seichel is. Seichel grows from small Seichel, big Seichel, but it has even a bigger Maila. You could move from one to another. What do you mean you could move from one to another? Al derach saying Seichel is Seichel nicht mechuber mugder und untergeworfen zu ein Teve. Seichel is not limited and not under the control of the nature of the person. Seichel is in Yonei zu verstehen Azach. Seichel, the idea of Seichel, of intellect, is to understand something, what the way something is, nicht wie ihm willst, not the way your nature you want, nor wie the Zach is. You have to understand the way the thing is. You go and you could change. In Seichel, certain thing you understand chesed, certain thing you understand is gura. By Einyan Maskonas Seichel as Darb sein chesed, when your Seichel thinks about something, you come to a decision, oh, here you have to be kind. Another thing you have to be strict. So Seichel moves from one thing to the other. And the same person, and has a good Seichel. So the Seichel taka grows. But there's another thing, Seichel moves from one kind of thing, one sug to another sug. But the midah itself, midas, the emotions, are limited to what the emotion is. Midas ha-chesed bleibt mitzad atzmin kava chesed. Chesed remains chesed. When I say midas ha-gvura, in kava gvura is always in this line of gvura. As is norvas ivakse mekatos lagatos. You could have less chesed, you have more feeling, more emotion of chesed. You have less emotion of gvura, higher emotion of gvura. But chesed is chesed. So each emotion is what it is limited. It doesn't move. Chesed doesn't turn into gvura, and gvura doesn't turn into chesed. But seichel could move. Now you understand one thing which is chesed, one thing which is gvura. So you can move from one. So seichel has a shaykhis to chai. It's like an animal that has more life and it's able to travel. While the midas can't travel from one to another, it could just grow. So midas is the union of tzemeach in the person, the growth, and seichel is the intellect, is the chai of the person. That's like an animal which moves from place to place. Now, Keshem Ketzameich in Elam Godel is Uzgitil Kanal. Mit der Meile was ständig mechuber l'sheisha. Now that we compare midas to a tree, and we said before, what's the Meile of Tzameach? And the Tzameach in the person will be similar to the Tzameach in the physical world. So just like the Tzameach in the world is separate, is different, special, exclusive, with this special Meile that it's always connected to its root, same thing when we talk about the tzemeach of the person, which are the midas, we have the same thing. As a hob mamayli b'seichel, is a mile over seichel. See, just like the tzemeach things that grow of a mile over chai, that chai is not connected, it could go away from its source, while tzemeach is connected to the source. So same thing by a person. The midas are more connected to the source, which is the person himself. That the midas are connected to their source, which is the pneumius, the inner part of the person, which means the midas express the person. They're connected to the person. If you want to describe a person, Rabbi doesn't say these words I'm saying now, but I'm just explaining it. If you want to describe a person, say this person is kind. You describe him by midas. So what kind of person he is? The kind of person that has a certain midah. When you say a person is seichel, that doesn't describe what kind of person he is. It just describes a milah he has. But that's not the person himself. The midas is what describes the person himself. So the midas, the emotions, are close to what the person is. That's close to the nefesh of the person. Similar to what we said before about tzemeach, that it's something that grows, it's connected to the source. Midas come from the source of the person, and they're more connected to the source of the person, to what the person is, more than the seichel. And this is why, as we see, that midas, which is the emotions, the feeling of the heart, have such a strength. It's very hard that you change places. It's very hard for a person to change his midah. Like we said before, by a tree. A tree is very strong. Why is it strong? Because it's connected to the source. By the midas of a person, it's also the midas are very strong. So a person has a certain midah, it's very hard to change. Anisha chesed b'tivei, if a person naturally is a kind person, yes, chesed is gor shver es onishtaneven zu sein aisha gvura. It's very hard that you change to become a person of gvura. Or that'll say the same way the other way. Now the Rebbe explained, I want to tell you the Rebbe, as Abba became meglech, it's possible. It's not common. In the majority of cases, it's not there. But it could happen. A mensch can sich misgaber sein mit sein seichel of teve midas. If a person could, through his seichel, overcome the nature of his midas, bizarre can say mishanan sein for alle tev. You could even change it from bad to good. You could just come to realize that you have to change your midas, and you could change your midas. But that is also similar to a tree. Azevi by Elonis, like by a tree, is do the tircha yesere von ekes ein zei. Min kemam. But if you work very hard and you tear them out from their place, you uproot them. When the tei is and you plant it someplace else, so they could continue growing in the new place. And sometimes even more than the first place. And the Rebbe brings in order 25. There's a medrash rabbo concerning a geffen, a vine, of action that if you want it to become better, you uprooted from its place, you planted someplace else, it becomes better. So even by a tree, you could do the same thing in the midas, which is like we said, like a tree, that you could change it, but it's not easy. Why is it not easy? Because the midas are connected to the person. If that's the person, that's what it is. It's very hard to change. Just like a tree is connected to its source, you can't change it. And since I want to say just by Derech Agav, the first words by a Fabrenga that I remember from the Rebbe was Simchas Torah Tovshin Yud Ches. I was there as a kid. My parents lived in Cleveland, so my father took me to the Simchas Torah for Simchas Torah to the Rebbe. And I remember the whole Fabrenga, I can't say over, I remember. I just remembered these words that the Rebbe in the middle spoke something about Birur HaMidas, to purifying, to changing your Midas. And the Rebbe said, Birur HaMidas is Ashver Azach, to change your Midas is hard thing. And then he stopped and smiled and he says, Adarabbe, proof that is and try it, you'll see. These are the words that remained in my mind. I tried to look it up in the Sichas from that year from Simchas Torah Tovshin Yud Ches. It's not in the Hanocha, but I remember clearly that Rebbe said it's hard to change. You could change it, the same like a tree. That a tree cannot change, a tree cannot move, cannot change, because it's connected to its source. You could, if you really wanted. The same thing. Midas is the tzemeach of the person, and normally you can't change. It's hard. If you work hard, you could change it. Und das Guf ist der Tam, für was Seichel wird nicht mugdir in Teva Odom. Now, this is the reason why we said before, Seichel is not limited to Teva. You could have a Teva of Chesed, but when you understand something has to be Gvura, you'll understand Gvura. It's not limited to what your Teva is. We see, aber ein Mensch kann verstehen, bis zu Teufel sein, you could understand something which is against your nature. You could understand that. You could even grasp it. Weil der Seichel Chai Shebodem is Begilu nit as a mechuber to Sheirish Nafshe, because Seichel, which is called the Chai of the person, so it's not so Begilu, not so obvious how it's mechuber connected to the Sheirish of the Nefesh. Punkt wie Chai in the Melem Godel, just like the animals in the world as a whole. The animal is not connected always to its Sheirish. The same thing, the Seichel, which is the Chai of the person, is not connected to the Sheirish, the Etzem of the person. That's why it's not limited to what you are. But the Midas, if that's your Midah, that's connected to who you are, that's to your Nefesh. And if it's connected, mechuber to your Nefesh, you can't change it. Like a tree, mechuber to the place, you can't change it. If you work very hard, the Rebbe says you could. In other words, he's not saying you can't change, but it's not so simple. The Mitzvah verstehen, where the Pasuk sagt, ki Odom eitz hasoda, die Sach von Odom is eitz hasoda, can also follow. This will explain what the Pasuk means, ki ha'odom eitz hasoda. The person is the tree in the field. And as we said before, it doesn't mean it's a moshel, that there are certain aspects in a person which is similar to a tree in the field. A person is a tree in the field. Why? Why is it? Val dafke in the midas. And we said before, what's a tree? A tree is midas. What's a tree in the person? The midas. Because dafke the midas. Pines sameach shabei, the sameach, the thing that grows within the person. Kum taruis begilu is a sheirish shemoki v'aris v'pnimis nefesh. That brings out the begilui, that in a obvious way, the sheirish of the pnimis nefesh, of the pnimis nefesh. And you see that, as we explained before, you see that in the midas. That's a pshat odom eitz hasoda. That eitz hasoda, which is the trees, and the trees by the person, that's the main, that's what the etzem of the person is the midas. As the far as that's why the main aveda, the main service of Hashem that the person has to do is not so much in the seichel, nabikir and zichar amidus, that you have to purify your midas. And in order 29, the Rabbi Tim's Maramekemis from different places in Chassidus, where it says the main aveda of a person is to purify and change his midas. Because fixing the midas, that affects the pnimius, the inner part of your nefesh. Und der Rebbe, der Gerecht an Odom zu sein Schleim, ist darf durch der Aveda. So when does a person become completely what he as a person is supposed to be? Is through this Aveda. The Aveda dealing with the Midas. Because as the Schleim is from Seichel Odom goes even more. When is the Seichel complete? And the Seichel is hinted, is in the word V'yadai to Hayim, you should know. When is the Shleimus, the completion of the Seichel? When is the Seichel complete? If it has an influence on the Midas, like the Pasuk says, you shall know and bring it to your heart. So the main thing is the Midas. And when you have the proper Midas and you work properly, then your Seichel is B'Shleimus. But why is the Midas the most important part? Because that is what the person is. Like the Semeach, and especially the tree, which is the connected to what its source is. And by a person, the midas are connected to the person himself. This is what the Gemara is masber. This is what the Gemara explains. In other words, the Gemara's kasha was Posik said Odom eitz hasoda. So Gemara learns not a moshel. A person is a tree. And the question was, what, a person is a tree? Why is this? Why is the concept of a tree the person? Now we know what the Gemara answers. The Gemara explains that the Rinyan from Odom eitz hasoda gitzich haruis and them vasim talmud chacham hoganov menetechel. What did the Gemara say? What is the comparison? A person to a tree, the Talmud Chacham, if he's Hagun, if he's a proper Talmud Chacham, learn from him. So simple pshat is it's connected to the tree, just like a tree. Some trees you could eat from, some Talmud Chacham you could learn from. Some trees you can't eat from, Talmud Chacham that's not Hagun you can't learn. But the Rebbe learns different pshat. He learns the pshat is, the Gemara answers is that what's the pshat? A person is a tree, that if the Talmud Chacham is Hagun, if he's a proper Talmud Chacham, then you should eat. What does that mean? The Pirish von Hogan is when you say is a proper Talmud Chacham means that by the Talmud Chacham is faran nit nur Mailas HaSeichel, limud. By the Talmud Chacham, he doesn't only have the Maila of his Seichel. Talmud Chacham means he's a smart person, he's a scholar. That's the Seichel. Nor as ein Seichel bar frik seine mitas. When is he a proper Talmud Chacham? When he is Hogan. Hogan means, but das bringt ihm zu führen sich an Eifel Hogan, that you behave in a form of Hogan. That means the mitas. Und dafke von Azat Talmud Chacham Teichel. Only from such a Talmud Chacham that his seichel affected his midas and he changed his midas, that's what you should eat. For nim learn and makabel side, only from him you should learn while because the person, the main thing of the person is the tree. And what's the tree? The tree is the tzameach of the person, which is the midas. When is man an odom b'shleimusik? When is the person a real person? B'meila you could learn from him. Then he's an eitz hasoda. When you are like a tree, as b'chinas hatzem, which is the tzameach. Just at the Prinus at Semeach Shabo, the Midas that the Semeach of the person, which is his Midas, is the way it's supposed to be. So now we understand the Gemara's Kasha and the Gemara's Teres. The Gemara says, Posig means Odom is a tree, and the Gemara answers, what's the pshat? The Odom is a tree. The Gemara answers that yes, that the Odom is a tree, that the tree part of the Odom is the main part of the Odom. And that is the Midas. And therefore, he says, what is the Maisa B'Peil? The Maisa B'Peil is that the Talmud Chochem that you want to learn from should be a Talmud Chochem that is Midas are proper. And that's the pshat. Yes, a person is a tree. A person is the Midas. A tree is the Midas. A person is the Midas, and that means that you have to have Midas which are good, and then you're a proper Talmud Chochem. Then the Rebbe continues. Just like it's by every individual, as we just explained, has the senior, the midas, the seichel, etc. The same thing is concerning generally of Klal Yisrael, of the whole nation. That we also have to have this idea of feeling that we have to be connected. We said the mile of midas is connected to the essence of the person, the source of the person, the source of his chayas. All the Yidden have to be that way. All the Yidden stammen from the Gimel of us, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankov. All the Yidden come from the three of us, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankov. Und das ist in der Eifen, das ist eine ständig verbundene Mechuber mit Ovis, in a way that they're always connected to the Ovis. When we Rashi talked from Posek, Rashi said on the Posek, Kimereish Surim Merenda, that Bilam said, I see him from the top of the rocks. So he meant, Ani mistakel b'rei shisom, u'b'tchila shorasheim. I'm looking at their beginning, in the beginning of their root. I see them, the Eden, that they are founded on their roots. The Ovis v'imos and the Ovis v'imos. Now our root is the Ovis and the Imois we see here. What is the union of the Ovis? In which way do we see the connection of a Yid to their source of them, which is their root, which is the Ovis? Not so much in Seichel. By Midas we find that our connection to the Ovis is in the Midas. It's known as the Gimel Ovis and connected the Gimel Midas. We know, it says in many places. This and other svarim that the three of us represent the three midas: Ave, Yira, Rachmin. Kolos midas. The first three midas: Chesed, Bura, Tiferes, which is love and fear and Rachmin and pity. These are the three, and from all the other ones are branched out from these. These are the main midas. When Zeyob made us given Libneim Achrei Madelam Midas, and the others made us inherit these three midas from them. Azeyas Pchinas Oves and Faran Tomid B'Cholz Man B'Cholodem, that this union of these pchines, this union of the midas of the Ovis, every Yid has, always, all times, by all persons. The Tam the Rufis, what is the reason? Why Taka do we connect to the Ovis mainly with the midas? Now, before we even go further, we understand the pshat already, because midas is the etzem, and we're connected to the etzem. But the Tam the Rufis, the reason is the Inyan al Yerush is verbunden mit etzem from Meirish and Yerish. The reason why we inherit is because the one that's in the heir, the one that inherits, is one etzem with the one. And the order 37, the Rebbe brings from the Ragachover, Hayerush u'metzias hameirish. When someone inherits something, it's not like someone buys something from somebody or gets a present. They're two separate people. They just, the object changed ownership. But the Yerusha, it's not that the object changed ownership. The one that inherits is in the place of the one that made him inherit. So it's really one. So there's the etzem of the father, let's say, is the etzem of the son. On the Rebbe, because they're one etzem, das was the Ovis of Nibri gem Libneim Achreim from Yerusha. That's why what did the Ovis give over as an inheritance to the children is not as it's not so much in their understanding of Lakus that we inherited, that we're able to understand the Lakus. And they also had high levels of understanding of Lakus. Ledugma, for instance, Madreges Avram, the level of Avram, says Chassidus, is such a high level of understood in the Lakus. Seichel Anel Mekol Rayim, it says Chassidus, Avram is Seichel Anel Mekol Rayim, it's a Seichel that's very high. But that's not mainly what it says we inherit, that understanding in the Lakus. Because Seichel is not so much connected to the etzem of the person. What is given over as an inheritance, something has to do with the etzem of the Meirish, gives over to the Yerish. Seichel is not so much the etzem as we said before. What do we inherit? The midas of the Ovis. Because the midas of the Ovis is connected to the etzem. And we, Yidden, as children, descendants of the Ovis, also our etzem is connected to the midas, so we inherit these midas. That's all because midas is more connected to the etzem of the person. That's why we in Yashin only these midas. So just like we said before, that the midas are the etzem of the person. That's what he explained before And that's why Odom Eitz Asoda, so to Bechlal, we have to know that the Midas is the one that, and we're talking before when they connecting to the source, and that's the Midas. So by Yidin Bechlal, we're connected to the source. And what's the source? The obvious, but in which way are we connected? In the form of the Midas, because the Midas are connected to the Etzem. One of the lessons we have to take out in a simple way from this Inyan. The source of life of a Yid is Torah. It says, the words of Torah, they are our life. But the way the order of life by most people is set up according to Torah, not against it. According to Torah, set up in such a way as the that those people that only learn Torah, and not even those that only learn Torah, but Yeshveil means would spend a lot of time learning Torah, is not the majority. His Yashvas Bola Shel Torah, to be Misyashev in Torah, that's not the majority. Nicht wie Doggen Shebayam was gefunden sich ständig betech Mokeh Chayusam. Fish are always in their Mokeh. Most Yidden are not always in the Mokeh, not always involved completely in Torah. There's a gay Narusi Welt. People go out into the world. There we have the mission to accomplish, to make a dwelling place for Hashem in the lower world. So most people are away from the source. It's not that our whole life is involved in Torah. We are involved in doing a shlichus, but not in Torah. Torah is the source of life. You have to remember, as a Odom Eitz Asoda, a person is like a tree. Just like a tree is connected to the Mokeh of his chayes, the source of his life, a Yid has to be connected to the source of his life, which is Torah, which means the chayes and Torah mitzvahs is very, very practical here. The chayes, the excitement and the life of Torah mitzvahs, so that this is gekommen die Zeit von dir, that every person, when he was younger, before he came 20 years old, it says in Pirkei Avos, it says out of 40, but that you start chasing, which means you start going to the world. But before that, you were in yeshiva, you were in cheder. So those years that you learned Torah and you were involved in Torah, dabei im Bleiben ständig, you always have to stay, you always have to be connected to that source of Torah. You have to feel that you are connected to that time. And it's very practical. This haste means like this. By him darf nicht sein der Hergesh, the feeling should not be as hat amol gelernt in cheder und yeshiva. That he learned, once upon a time, he learned the cheder in the yeshiva. Und gedenkt iets, was hat amol gefühlt und getan. And you remember now what you felt and what you did then. That's wrong. Nor felt iets der verbunden mit jenen. You have to feel now that you are connected to that time. Bis felt, das ist ein chayes iets. Und dann besteht es, you have to feel that this is your chayes now. And this is your Metzias. So that's one thing you always have to feel connected to the Torah that you learned when you did learn and you were more involved in Torah. Leidach dar from the Yeshvei Elvis, and on the other hand, also the other people who are involved mainly in Torah have to know, as I says, ni genug lieben that Torah alone. It's not enough just to sit and learn. And learning is more seichel. Which there are a lot of changes, as we said before, you could change seichel. Is nitoken versicherung, as ich noch dem Megillah Ruis von Ola Sheter, so bleiben zugebunden in the Boy's Torah. If you you're only learning Torah, you never know what could happen when you go out of Torah. When the time comes, you never know that you will still be connected as you're supposed to Torah. Only when the learning is, it brings to your heart, which means the learning is in a way that you bring it down to your heart, you bring the midas out of it, it becomes carved into the person that it doesn't change. Und in was für ein Matze, soll sich nur gefühlen, bleibt zugebunden zum Mokeh Chaim, zum Mekir Mein Chaim, no matter how you are, you'll always still be connected to the Torah.